Hello, Colby Academy. Welcome back to your November Virtue video. Father Archer here. And this month, I would love to talk to you about the virtue of courtesy. Now, courtesy kind of has an interesting origin. If you would write out the word, you would see that it has the word court. So courtesy originally meant having a courtly bearing. Now, what does this mean? The people of the court, the lords, the ladies, the knights, the king and queen, back in the medieval times, would be people who had responsibility for the common good. That there are many people, who are more like the peasants perhaps, who were mostly concerned about their own lives. They would be farmers, maybe shepherds, and most of their time and activity was dedicated to simply providing for their family. That they would carry forth their tasks of the farm, or of watching the sheep or the cows, and they would do all of those things just to make sure there was food on the table for their family and for their children. And that's where most of their time and energy went. But for the people in the court, they weren't concerned simply to care for their family. But instead, they were concerned for all of society. That's what it would mean to belong to the court. And so it's true that they would do things to make sure there was enough for their family, but they would also do things such as passing laws, or perhaps sometimes going to war, to care for the good of the society as a whole. And courtesy finds its origin in this practice, the courtly bearing, and it fits very well with this image of the court. So when we have a life of courtesy, it's when we don't live simply for ourselves, but we look out for other people. Of course, sometimes we do this in very small ways. There's great practices that I hope your parents taught you of, generally speaking, not being the first to rush through line to get food, of letting other people go before you, always holding the door, having a good handshake where you make eye contact with the other person when you shake their hand, and you have a nice firm grip. These are all small ways that we live courtesy in our daily lives. But even more fundamentally, courtesy is about showing respect to other people. There's a great story of one of my favorite authors, G.K. Chesterton. He was a journalist in the beginning of the 1900s in England. He started raised without much religion at all, but then he ended up converting to the Catholic faith. And he was a very large man. He grew quite fat as he grew older, and he was also very funny. But he would debate people all the time, especially a man named H.G. Wells. That G.K. Chesterton and H.G. Wells, they would travel around and they would go to different towns with one another, and in each of these towns they would have a debate. And when they would debate, though, G.K. Chesterton was always very careful that he would never insult the person he was arguing with, but he would speak very highly about how intelligent H.G. Wells was, and what a wonderful person, what a great man of character he was, while at the same time explaining with great clarity and great humor how wrong H.G. Wells was about pretty much every opinion that he had. In the way that he would debate, he would get the whole audience laughing with him, including his opponent, because he would never attack his opponent, he would only attack the ideas of his opponent. And there's a beautiful testament to the effect that this had on H.G. Wells. At a certain point in his life, H.G. Wells described a dream that he would have sometimes. And although he himself did not really believe in heaven, he himself was hardly a Christian, but he would have a dream of what heaven would be like, if it were real. And this is what he says. This is from H.G. Wells describing his friend G.K. Chesterton in heaven. He said, "The company about me on the clouds varies greatly with the mood of the vision, but it always is in some way beautiful. One frequent presence is G.K. Chesterton, a joyous whirl of brushwork, appropriately garmented and crowned. When he is there, I remark, the whole ceiling is sort of a radiation of joyful light." And so this is a good reminder for us that even when we disagree with people, or even if there's someone where we think, oh, they're not right, they're wrong, it's so important that we're like G.K. Chesterton, where we always show them courtesy, where we don't attack the person, even if we're arguing with them about the ideas that they hold. We see Jesus do this as well, his great courtesy and his great patience. And it shows in a beautiful way in the story of Nicodemus. Nicodemus arrives very early in John's Gospel, in the 4th chapter. And Nicodemus was a very famous Pharisee, a great teacher of the law. And he approached Jesus one day, and he said to Jesus, he said, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one can do these signs that you are doing unless God is with him." And he goes on to have a beautiful conversation with Jesus about what it means to be born of the Holy Spirit, to be baptized, and about the mission that Jesus came to the earth to carry forth. But Nicodemus wasn't yet ready to be his disciple. And Jesus was very courteous. He was very patient with Nicodemus. And he didn't put any pressure upon Nicodemus to follow him right away. And because Jesus was so courteous and so patient, Nicodemus ended up being a great disciple. He didn't follow Jesus during Jesus' time in his public ministry. But at the very end, after Jesus was crucified, it was Nicodemus, along with Joseph of Arimathea, who went and got permission to bury Jesus in the tomb. And so when we have courtesy towards other people, this is a great way that we show them the love of God. We show them that their life has dignity and value, even if they're not yet ready to take that full step that we think that they should take. And so, my friends, for this month, my homework for you is to practice the virtue of courtesy, to come up with just one or two things that you want to work on. It could be putting your phone away and not using your phone at meals or when you're walking around or maybe even out in public. Or it could be making sure you grow in the virtue of giving people a good handshake. When you're walking down the hall or you're walking around your house or out in public, trying to make eye contact and smiling and asking people, "How are you?" These are all just some small ways that we can live the virtue of courtesy. And so, my friends, until next week, until next month, I invite you to stay close to Jesus and to practice this virtue of courtesy well. God bless.